So, can you describe the culture of the school? If someone walks into the school for the first time, what do you imagine their initial impression would be?
I think they would see a lot of hard workers. We are very much a culture in which everybody pitches in, and there's a lot of high expectations at our school. And so a lot of people have always used kind of this saying of that everybody is working together, and if we were a ship, we would all be moving the ship together with our oars. And I think that is a pretty good description of our school. I think also somebody would see a very organized, high-achieving school where our kids are doing a lot of different things. Our kids are always all around the school. They're in different places. They're using different technologies. They're using different projects. And I think overall you would just see a hardworking school.
Describe the staff's willingness to take on new things. When are they most willing, and when are they least willing?
Well, we're a really large staff, and so questions like this kind of come in a twofold. For the most part, we're very willing to get things going as the district does new initiatives and tries new things. I think a kind of reluctance to that is when the same thing keeps changing multiple times. I think it's hard because when you finally get a grasp on one piece of it and then it changes again, there's a reluctance to want to change again and want to learn more about it. And I think educators all over the place are experiencing the fact that so much more now than ever, there's so many more things to do, and we have to work together as a school to make our plates larger and not just keep adding on to them. So the reluctance, I think, comes when we have to change something that we've been doing that we just started. And then I think the willingness comes quite a lot when you look at what we're doing for the kids. I think when we start seeing their growth and we're trying new curriculum out and we start seeing the kids really like it and we're getting really positive feedback from the children, I think that's when the willingness really starts to grow. For an example of that is this year we started a Positivity Project. And I think at first there were some groans and moans about having to do it because we felt like it was another thing that we were adding to our plate. But then you see the kids making all these connections to what they're learning in Positivity Project, and you see the parents coming and talking about how much they've enjoyed having these conversations with these kids based on the traits of Positivity Project. And you start seeing like the culture change, and I think that is creating more willingness for people to spend that 10 minutes a day working on that.
What are the priorities of this school?
Well, we do have our indicators set for our school improvement plan, and those priorities and that align with the social emotional well-being of our students and our teachers' ability to focus on the well-being, the social emotional well-being of our kids. That also aligns the standards. We're focusing on the standards this year, and we are also doing the standards, we have the social emotional, and then family engagement is our other indicator that we're working on this year. But as a priority, I think we did not meet growth last year in our students. We had majority of our students, or not majority, we just had not enough students to have said that we met growth. And so I think this year a huge focus and priority is going to be to make sure that we're challenging all our students to meet growth.
So you mentioned social and emotional learning as one of the indicators. Is there a qualified expert who can help with implementation of a core social and emotional learning curriculum over time? And if so, who?
Well, I'm the school counselor, and I think that I am considered we call them champions of the indicators, so I am considered the person that looks at that indicator most closely and kind of facilitates the team's work on that indicator for the school. I would not consider myself an expert because I have lots to learn as well, but that is something that I really do enjoy as part of my job, and that I really love that we're focusing on it, and I've loved bringing a lot of the ideas into it that we've been learning through the district, through professional development, and also just through my line of work and what I do.
Are there curricula and other resources related to social and emotional learning that are readily available? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, so the district mandates that all school counselors provide social self-regulation classes for the grades of 3 through 5, so that's social emotional learning classes, and what those focus on is they focus on self-regulation and your ability to cope with different situations. So that's available for school counselors for all schools in Wake County for grades 3 through 5. We also this year have been doing the Positivity Project, which I mentioned last, and that has a lot of social emotional learning themes in it when it talks about the different traits, and so that curriculum and that is readily available to our teachers. And other than that, we rely heavily on our MTSS framework to provide a structure for that, and in terms of the interventions and the curriculum that we're using, a lot of it is evidence-based practices that I know of when we're dealing with children's behavior to build those skills in them, and we're pulling from the expertise that we have in this building and from other things that we know are evidence-based. But it might vary just from kid to kid what we do.
Have you ever received coaching related to core behavioral supports or social and emotional learning? And is there someone in the building that you could receive coaching from?
Well, I did go to grad school, which I would very much consider to be a lot of coaching and a lot of stress and all that good stuff that grad school does for you. In terms of that, I think that a lot of people look in the school towards me for that coaching, and I do try to be as available as possible for it. I have not been necessarily coached myself, but I do have a lot of people that I can consult with and talk to when I have when I need ideas to be heard, when I need more ideas. There are people that I feel readily available. One of them would be our head elementary school counselor of Wake County, which is Rebecca Atkins. I also see a lot of work being done in the Student Services PLT in general. So that is, you're adding our school psychologist in there, which is Hannah Van Doren. You're adding our school social worker, which is Takara Ingram. And then you're also adding like our other school counselor, which is Scott Gordon, into that mix. And so when you look at that, I know that especially for our school psychologists, we've had a lot of teachers and a lot of parents reach out to her to receive that same social emotional development support, especially when we're looking at children that are either maybe will qualify for special education or have to look at that. She really helps people view the child as the whole child and also look at the skills that they need in that regard and provide consultation for that.
What are the primary social and emotional learning needs of the students at this school? So for example, self-awareness, self-management, and responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness. What would you say the main learning needs are?
So I really think kids need all of them to be quite honest. But if we look at our school, I think it depends on which grade I'm talking about. So when I'm looking at 5th grade, I look a lot at the relationship aspect. Just developmentally where they're at, you start having other outside factors play into it, like the amount of screen time they get or the phones that they get that they can text each other. You're looking at the hormones and the starting to like each other and the things like that. And so I think that they need a lot of coaching in that aspect of that and the relationship building, and they need a lot of relationship skills that social emotional learning kind of forefronts. When you're looking at the younger grades, I think you're looking at a lot of self-management needs, a lot of self-awareness needs, just being aware of the feelings that they're having, being aware of what those around them are thinking, being aware of how their actions affect others, and then also how to cope with those things as well.
Are there data sources available at the school to help with problem solving around core behavioral or social and emotional needs?
For that, we rely on our MTSS system. So we look at children in a tier 1, which is all of our children, and we're looking for about 80% of them to be hitting their benchmark. Now, we don't have really a benchmark for social emotional learning, but we do have a pretty good grasp, especially with the consultation of like Hannah and Takara and myself, that we do have like a pretty good grasp on what's developmentally appropriate. So we're looking for that first. And then our children that need additional support for that, we're looking at creating a tier 2 plan for them, and having a lot of that learning continue in the classroom, or having that learning continue in small groups, or having that learning continue in some individual one-on-one sessions that we all 3 provide to our kids. And then we're also looking at, then if we're still looking, we're going to more intensive tier 3 supports in the social emotional aspects, and that's a lot of one-on-one time with the student being spent, a lot of intense focused conversation, and skill building with the students.
What would you like to see change in terms of the school's support for social and emotional learning?
I'd like to just see it happen quicker. I think so much so in our county, and I think a lot of educators are feeling this way. We have so much to prioritize. We have so many different things we can do. And there's a lot of research out there that says if you have a really solid foundation of social emotional learning, that a lot of other things become a lot easier. But you're always playing that catch-up game, where it's like, do you spend the time building the social emotional skills, or do you spend the time building the academic skills? How do you mirror those two together to make sure that you're doing both at the same time? And that's going to take time for us to figure out. But it would just be nice if it was just a tad quicker, so that these kids really could get that firm foundation. We could be very preventative in our care for students.
What types of supports do you find most helpful when implementing a new program or practice? So in other words, what could help things go more quickly?
I think buy-in. Buy-in's a big thing. I think that when it always comes from the same people, it's hard. And when you're just creating more and more things to be put on people's plate, it's hard for them to focus on it. So I think that buy-in is really important when you're trying to make change and create this culture. I think the proper allocation of time is important. And I mean that in 2 different ways. I mean that one in the way of that we spend adequate time developing this in teachers and in staff members and in students. But I also mean that those of us who this is a large part of our job have the right amount of time allocated to focusing on this, both within staff and within students.
Right. I think that's about all of the questions I have, Lauren. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.